So let's talk about the new music. You mentioned that you had made it with Mark Ronson, who was a big fan of yours, and you had talked about how this sort of gave you a boost creatively. I think, Nick, you used the word revitalized. Talk a little bit about why working with him sort of gave you that boost that you needed.
Well, we actually first worked with Mark a few years ago. We did a one-off concert in Paris with him, and what Mark had done was very cleverly take our old master recordings, and he'd merged some of them together, cut some of them up, put some new music in between, and really made a dance mix, a DJ mix of a lot of our material from over all the different periods of our career. And he sent it to us and said, now could we play it live like that? And we all looked at each other and we were floored that someone had just done this, but it was immaculate. And so we learned to play it like that, which was quite a task. And we just had a really good time with him. He played at the show with us, and he seemed to have an innate understanding of what the band was about. Having grown up listening to us, he really knew all of the material, obscure B-sides, everything. And we said, why don't we do something new together? We got in the studio, and within 3 days, we'd got 2 or 3 tracks, and we were all looking at each other saying, well, this is perfect. How are we going to finish the album with somebody else? I hope he'll do some more for us. And then that night, I was riding back in a car with Mark, and he said to me, I hope this isn't the wrong thing to say, but would you mind if I stayed and did some more of the songs with you? I'd love to do the whole album. And I just laughed because we'd been talking about it earlier and said, yeah, thank goodness for that. Absolutely. He's got a great way about him to make people do things. He's
I love having him around, actually. We played with him in LA for the David Lynch concert that we did. And it's just something about Mark that's very inspiring to have around. He's got a real calmness. He's very inspirational. And I think we just play better when he's around. And I think he always had a vision for this album. And part of that vision was, to go back to our roots. His thing was, all these bands are kind of name-checking you. They're using your kind of grooves. They're using the analog synths that you used in the early 80s. And his whole thing was to get back and kind of retake that ground and bring it back into 2011, which was quite a task. But I think, we did it.
Well, the one quote that everybody talks about was Mark he famously said he wanted to make the imaginary follow-up to Rio. When he said that to you, what was your reaction? And do you actually think
I don't think he ever said that to us, actually.
He didn't say to you, he said it to other people.
Bit of a soundbite, actually.
Right.
But I think we know what he meant. It was, stop trying to, be like other people, be like yourselves. You've got an amazing body of work, listen to yourselves and be yourselves. And that was his mantra for the whole thing. I've been trying to get, for years, I've been kind of trying to get away from the girls on Film Beat or using like disco funky hi-hats. And his thing was, no, that's your ground, man. You go back and play like that. And I think it really worked for us.
Yeah, there's a few key things that he wanted from the project. He wanted to get some energy back into it. I think he took the tempo up, really, of what we were doing with all the songs, made us play faster again, which immediately brings excitement to music. And he also really helped us concentrate on the songwriting, because it's very easy when you get so far into an album, you think you've got, half a dozen really good songs, and then you've got another half a dozen that you really like. But you sort of know they're not quite as good as the other half a dozen. But it's a lot of work and really making some harsh decisions, throwing things away that you've spent weeks working on, saying, no, we're going to have to go back to the drawing board. And we did that. That's why it took quite a long time. And I think it paid off because as a set of songs, they're very cohesive and they really work as an album. And so he's largely responsible for forcing us to do that.
Well, tell me about the title track, All You Need Is Now. What does that phrase mean to you? Why was it the right title for this album?
I think it's kind of Zen, isn't it? It's about living in the moment and getting back to, I think, what you like in your youth, where you don't particularly plan what you're doing next year. You're not worrying about what happened last week. It's all about living in the moment. And we just thought, what a great... I think it was John that actually picked up on it as an album title.
It's a slogan, really, isn't it?
It's great. It's a great mantra, I think, that we all try to to live with or live by.
What about the song itself? Why was that? Why did that immediately present itself as being, this is a good first single, a good introduction to this record?
Well, it was interesting the way the song came about, because it was from a jam. We were all in the room together playing, and I'd found this quite abrasive synthesizer noise that is the main sort of riff within the verse of the songs. And Simon immediately got attached to it and said, "No, keep playing that, let's play." And we were playing around it, and we got a fairly sort of almost bluesy melody over the verse. And we had another part that was the chorus, and then this beautiful middle section to the song, and we put it away for a while. And it didn't seem quite right. We hadn't got the order right. And then one day Simon and Mark were working on it, just put it up and said, because Simon really, really grabbed hold of it. And he said, no, I think I've got a melody for the middle section. And that's what became the chorus with All You Need Is Now. And they took out the chorus. We dumped it completely. And it's funny what happens with songs when you've got a little time to view them. And we all came in and heard what they'd done later that day and just said, well, yes, now it's perfect. That's a contender already, because it was such a beautiful melody and such a relatable sentiment. I think that's what you want with songs, is to try and touch people in some way. And I think there's a little bit of all of us that just wants to live for the moment.
Right, and then when it resolves into the melody of the chorus, it's such a great
kind of
moment. Oh, absolutely.
It's an interesting song because the verse is quite angular and quite angry in a way, but then it kind of goes up into this beautiful classic Duran chorus. And I think as soon as we heard that, we thought, wow, this is a big one.
A contender.
Mm.
Well, the song is featured in Dior's Be Iconic campaign, and, people call you guys icons. Do you think of yourselves that way?
Oh, yeah. Every morning when we get up after breakfast, having had no sleep, we stand there in front of the mirror and say, oh, don't I look like an icon today?
More of a legend, I think.
Well, after a while, it's like, you get so many Lifetime Achievement Awards and,
you can't,
Godlike Geniuses Awards.
You can't ever think about that.
We appreciate it, but we don't kind of sit around thinking, oh, God, aren't we great? Aren't we iconic? We're always thinking about
what's next,
where to go next, apart from living in the moment, of course.
Well, that's what I've admired about you guys, is that you really have persevered. You never broke up, really. You just kept on going in different versions and different. Nick, I guess you've been the only constant throughout the entire thing.
Been the only one in the band for the absolute full term.
Can you believe that? Funny enough, I largely blame Mick Jagger for this, because one of the first times I met him, I was pretty young, and I suppose we were chatting, and he was giving me some advice, and he said, well, one of the main things is that you really need to stick together. That's half of what it's about. That's what's important. And it really always made an impression on me. It stuck with me that is something. You've got to be able to ride through the times when you're not as popular and you're not particularly fashionable, and people don't think that your contribution or whatever you've written was of any value at all. And then there are other times when people say, oh yeah, well, they were just the greatest thing from that period. And it all balances out somewhere along the line, I suppose. But definitely perseverance is.
I think the strange
important.
thing is you never quite know what's coming. Like, we put the last record out, and it was produced by Timbaland. Justin Timberlake was a writer on that album. We put a lot of work into it. And it came out, and we thought it was going to be, a big one, but it just wasn't quite accepted by the public. Whereas this one, we didn't have any massive expectations, and we just put it out as a limited download just before Christmas, and it was like number 1 in 15 different countries on the iTunes chart. So you just don't know. You don't really know what the public wants. All you can do is just keep trying and
so fickle,
doing your best.
Yeah,
so fickle.